Sarah, I'm really excited to talk to you today. We really just met each other through Instagram, and so really excited to talk. And so welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm really appreciative that you're bringing me on, and it's really cool. It's interesting. I find a lot more people are finding me, so you included. So thank you
Yeah,
for having
yeah,
me.
it really was. And I think that maybe it's an appropriate place to kind of start off with. I think one of the few first photos that I saw was with you and Edison. And so I
Yeah,
know he's a recent addition to your life, right? You've had him for a couple of years now?
yeah. He's we're going on our fifth year of being
Oh, fifth
together.
year. Awesome.
As of August. So, yeah, and I think it's prevalent that I say that the Instagram that you found me on actually is a culmination of our journey together. I started it in 2018, I think it was,
Hmm.
on New Year's Eve. And I just thought, what better way than to start Instagram about my life with him. It was I was, just thinking back, to the previous year and the upcoming year. And I was like, what am I grateful for? And I just thought, I'm grateful for him. So let's start sharing our story. And, I'm very open about my story and my life. So it just
Yeah.
felt really important to share my story as it relates to our story together because he's part of me.
Yeah.
So
I
I
love that. Yeah. And
I
he's
yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe we can just kind of let you tell a little bit of that story, right? I think that folks who are probably listening don't know your story, but
Yeah.
you have cerebral palsy, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm 30 years old. I like to say that because I'm coming at the diagnosis and the disability from an older adult. And I
Hmm.
think that perspective, while we're talking about it, the adult perspective of disability and what it is very important. Through my work in advocacy through these years, through the Instagram and through just my own exploration, I
Hmm.
find that the message portrayed is from a children's perspective or from a
Hmm.
parent's perspective as it relates to their child. And both of those perspectives are vastly different from someone who is actually living with a disability. So the message that's portrayed as um, as a parent looking into their child versus me
Hmm.
who is living it is very different. I mean, everything is valid. All messages are totally valid. But what I found is my message that I'm sharing, a lot of people say, oh, I didn't even realize that. Um, Even though they've probably touched on it through their story and through their situation, they don't, it's a different perspective. So
Yeah, and it's really, and I think that it's great that you're sharing your perspective, and the more that I talk to individuals that quote unquote have a disability, the one thing that is really clear is that us as a society like to define people and put people into a category by like what you can't do,
yeah,
right? Instead of what you can do and just focusing on that. And that's not even just as a disability, that goes all the way through, here's a year-end review and here's all the things that, you don't do well and that you need to work on. And so it's really, I think that having a mind shift so where that we, just focus on people's abilities
yeah.
and just understanding that we're all contributing members and it's just a matter of we're all finding our spot.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so yeah, I talk about everything and anything. You know, I'm curious what you're interested in, what you want to know,
Yeah, well,
what
I
your
think that
client,
it's
what your audience, you feel what your audience would want to know. I mean, I can say
from
everything and anything, but I'm
For
curious.
me, I look at this as a way to hopefully educate people who are uneducated about the topic. And so, we can't learn and grow as a society unless we understand other people's perspectives and, can
Absolutely.
try to, can just try to find a better way. And so instead of, making things harder for people, how do we help? How do we do something? And we had an initial conversation about, like, sometimes when you're struggling, or you don't really want help, and you're not even looking for people to ask you for help, that when you need it, you'll ask for it. And that's kind of, I think it's a great topic for
Cool.
people to understand.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And that's one of the things I was thinking about in preparation for our conversation. I think that that's kind of where I'm at right now. I I live currently with family, and that's a huge aspect, is like, can someone with a disability live independently?
Mm,
Um, I don't know how to best get there in this conversation, but I think that's an important piece of it. And interestingly enough, I find a lot of people out there that I'm looking at, or the stories that they share, is parents just really, really trying to do exactly that. Can my child ever live independently? Can they crawl? Can they sit up? Can they walk? All these, can they do this? Can they do that? And I think it's a mixture of what you're saying, is like trying to figure out what the person wants, and I think
yeah,
that is
yeah.
hard. That's very hard coming from a child's perspective to now. And so what I'm saying is I'm in the process of moving more so on my own. And
Mm,
that process has been um, a process in itself. I've lived on my own multiple times in the past, but now it's trying to figure out, okay, like, so what's it gonna be like? Am I just gonna be like poof and put in the world and with no
yeah.
help? Well, so I have to figure out, and I've done this. I've hired an agency, and I have one caregiver at this moment who
Hmm.
comes in and helps me. But it's telling her exactly what I need or what I don't need. And I've had some caregivers actually who just stand there, and it's like they're ready and willing and waiting for a direction. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, that's exactly what I don't need. You can actually walk out right now if you want, because I
Yeah.
don't need someone standing over me waiting with bated
For
breath
this,
on what they
yeah,
can do to help. It's more
yeah,
of
yeah.
just being there. And by the minute, if I say I need, help doing this or that, that's what they're doing. It's not so much of what can I do to help. It's just, I'm here to help, let me know what you need. And there have been a couple of people who I have said, um, don't really get that. And those are the people that
Mm.
it's not a judgment. It's just, they just don't, they're just not a good fit, or they just don't know,
Well,
they're eager to help.
and
And
I think that that is almost along the lines, because I talk to a lot of people about, like, therapy and therapists and different things
yeah,
like that. And so a lot of times, people will go to a therapist, and then it's not necessarily the right fit. And then it's like, oh, well, therapy is no good.
yeah,
And it's like, well, no, it's just that maybe you guys didn't have, the right experience in that, or that these two things don't, kind of combine. And so this is probably just as personal, right? Because everyone wants to sometimes be a caregiver this way. And then, that's because that's just what they know, but yet everyone's needs are going to be different. So it's really a matter of finding that blend.
yeah,
um and it's and it is a topic that is near and dear. I mean, certainly when my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I never thought about myself in that capacity. But I decided that we were going to keep her home throughout that entire
yeah.
experience, and so I became just that.
just tried to figure out what she needed, and yeah,
Yeah, and every day was
meld
different.
into it.
And that was it, and that's just the thing. It was never and it got to a point where I couldn't ask her what she needed. I just
Yeah,
kind of had to, because she can no longer communicate. So you just kind of have to,
yeah,
find somebody that you can kind of sync with, right?
yeah. No, and I find it interesting too. I've gone to doctor's appointments, right? So I'm having these people also come to doctor's appointments with me, and the doctor will address and say, "And who is this with you?" And I'm like, "And what relevance does that have?" So
Yeah,
there's
like,
that
so
too.
if they're with me, then I'm giving you probably permission to talk, right?
I get, yeah, I guess
Yeah.
it's like, are you comfortable? And I'm like, are you talking to me or are you talking to her? And turns out he's talking to her, saying, because these providers are
Mm,
very aware of people in the room. That's what I realized. It's not about making sure they're comfortable. It's just their innate nature of,
mhm,
if
mhm.
someone else is in the room, they're gonna like make sure they're okay too. And I don't know. It's a whole thing. And I'm just trying to figure it out. And I think and back to the Instagram, it started out as me and Edison and what we're doing, and then it sort of has melded into this like just general like daily blog of these topics,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
these situations, because I think as kind of popcorn random it is, because sometimes it does feel like that. As a blog for itself, it's a realistic kind of real-time view into my life.
Mhm.
And I also have a podcast as well. I think it's a good time. I'm actually restarting it, and starting season 2 of it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I can't wait to talk a little bit about that because yeah, I was just looking at some of it,
yeah,
and I know I'm excited to talk about some of that.
yeah. So there's a lot of things, but
And so, as far as, so I think it's great because you started this podcast and it's like your life with Edison. So I'm kind of interested into understanding maybe what was life like before Edison, and then how did Edison kind of come into your life, and what has he provided since?
yeah, cool. Yeah, so the podcast I feel like is more of my perspective, um,
Hmm.
separate from him, and then the Instagram is kind of the melding of the two.
Yeah.
So that's just how I'm kind of compartmentalizing. But talking about the Instagram, I mean, he's coming in and out of the podcast for sure, and it's all one thing. But I have just a bunch of different projects going on
Yeah.
and a bunch of different perspectives that I want to share, and it's getting very kind of a difficult task of trying to like separate out every single piece of my life
Keeping, yeah, like your life with
advocacy.
Edison's here, and
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
just your thoughts here.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I got Edison like 5 years ago. And you know, right before Edison, I kind of was thinking I want something. I don't know what it is. I waited a year and a half for him. So it was kind of the decision to apply for him, the and the waiting. But also before applying for him, and we're going way, way back, I was living on my own,
Mm,
and there was something missing. Like I needed
mm.
help, but I didn't know what exactly it was. And so yeah, I mean, I had been wanting a service dog since like 7 years old. So I'm like thinking,
Yeah. Gotcha.
it's time. I need this dog. I know how helpful it can be. So I'm ready, and I applied, and a year later it was like poof, he showed up, and I was just like, wow, that's incredible. the process alone, and that's a whole nother story.
Mm,
Process of applying for him was pretty seamless, but also incredible. I fundraised some money for the organization. The
yeah.
organization is a nonprofit. They are based in central Massachusetts.
Oh, excellent.
And they ask the
Over
client,
by me. What's the name of the organization? Do
oh
you
yeah,
remember?
NEADS, NEADS.
Okay.
And they're in Princeton, Mass. And they place and train service dogs for people of all different situations and challenges, including children with autism
Mm,
and veterans with PTSD. So um, I I like it. Just seemed like I just kind of came across them and applied and got accepted, and the rest is history. But it's not like, oh, that was easy. It was a process, and it was a decision for sure. I am the sole caretaker of him.
hmm
He is under my command pretty much.
hmm Yeah.
It's not like that. It's more
No,
personal than
but
that.
he's the one that he listens to you and only you.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
doesn't, yeah, he
Yeah.
takes, yeah.
Uh, so we've traveled together. We've done a lot together. One of the stories that I tell when I first originally got him was I was in Grand Central, and I had been traveling to New York City about like twice a week
Oh, okay.
for about a year or so before I got him. And I'm a pretty good traveler. But when I got him, it was like 3 days after training, we're on the train and we're in New York, and in the middle of Grand Central, a pen drops. I tell this story a lot because it was like one of those moments where, okay, my pen dropped. What do I do? And I start kind of panicking and like, but like, oh, I don't really need that pen. And then I thought to myself, it's like, well, I got this dog right here. He can pick it up. He picked up like no hesitation, and we were on our way. And I looked around and I go, did anyone see that? And I'm like, no one saw it because it was so quick. And we're
Yeah.
on our way, and he picked it up, and I was like, wow, now I didn't lose a pen. But it's something as that simple. And that's kind of interestingly enough, like I'm raising awareness about him, but essentially he's just part of me.
hmm
I sort of feel like he's kind of come sometimes, like if I hadn't done all this awareness about him and my story, like it wouldn't be a situation. He's just kind of like so seamlessly kind of just follows my life, and
hmm Yeah, and it's almost in it, yeah, like it's not even like
yeah,
this other part. It's
no,
just it's natural, and it's amazing to then not have to think about, okay, having to carry like a bunch of pens just in case you do drop one, and then
yeah,
you know what I mean? And
yeah,
it takes away other things that you have to think about because you have security with him, right?
yeah. Yeah. And I could even put a couple pens in his vest, his zipper pocket if I
Oh
wanted. I
yeah.
actually just the other day we were at the New York Botanic or the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
you're taking your mask on and off, and I was looking and I was like, oh, he's got a zipper pocket in his vest. I'll just stick it in there. I went, why did I think of that all these years? Like he
hmm
and he has a vest that he can wear, like a more backpack vest, but it's pretty big and not as slim. But I
hmm
thought he's got a little bit of space in there. I can put, my mask in there or some, because he's right next to me. We walk right next to each other. And I went, wow, that's
Each
genius.
other.
I never thought of that.
Well, and it's fun to now, like even all of these years later, is just
Yeah.
to think about, additional ways that he can continue to make your life easier,
Yeah.
because that's ultimately what he's there for,
Yeah.
and it turns into so much more of a relationship, but that's ultimately, what he's doing is to make your life easier in whatever capacity
Yeah.
that he can.
Yeah. I think there is there is that component of when people see me, they see me and they see a dog. To me, it's like we walk and I'm just like, and then I find people looking at me. I'm like, what are they looking at? I'm like, oh yeah, they're looking at me with this dog, I'm giving him a water break at the Botanic Garden yesterday, and like so many kids just, 3 seconds later, there's like a whole line of kids standing there staring at him drinking water. And I thought to myself, oh my God, like then this must be like an incredible sight for them.
Yeah. And so from what I understand, right, like you shouldn't go up to a service dog, right? Like you shouldn't, because
Right.
that's not, yeah, it's at a different level, obviously, than a pet.
Right.
And so what do you want folks to know about just that? Like, just that, obviously don't come up and want to pet and play or anything like that.
Yeah. It's up to the owner's perspective. I've been with Edison for so long that, if someone wants to pet him and it's a good situation, and it's quiet enough and he's calm enough, then I will let them say hello, for a short period of time. It's good to keep, there's a certain amount of balance that I need to keep for him, having that, okay, you can say hello to someone and then you're right back to work. That balance for him, is something that's good to keep, but it requires me to kind of monitor it and do it when it's appropriate.
Well,
And
because you always want him in a kind of a working mode,
yeah,
and right,
exactly.
like that's
Yep,
how he just always has to be thinking.
exactly. And he does. He's amazing that way. So there are times when, if someone wants to say hello, I go, well, he's been so good, I just, okay, sure. And I have him sit down and he looks me in the eye and then I say, okay, say hello. And he gets waggy and he gets excited. And then as soon as it's work time, he is right back looking at me and we go on our way. And it's like, it's almost as if that interaction didn't even happen. But it's a good test and a good way to keep his training up. And I do it at random times so that he doesn't expect that every single time someone comes by or that he's gonna get to say hello to them.
Yeah.
So it's the unpredictability of when I do it and the artful way that I do it. So knowing that, okay, I don't want to make him think that every third person he's going to get to say hello to.
Exactly. Well, because he's gonna then start to pick up on that. Like he would then learn that, and
yeah,
yeah,
he's
you don't
super
want that.
smart. I'm sure
Yeah,
he would.
exactly.
I'm sure he would.
Now,
But
do you give him, like, so you keep in this relationship? Do you, you know, like most people with a pet are gonna be, have that affection part of that
oh
or anything like
yeah,
that. Do you still, give him that? I would imagine that's a big part
oh
of it, right?
oh
Making,
yeah,
that connection with him, and so showing him that love and giving him
oh
that
yeah.
attention is got to be a big point, right? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a balance I feel that I have to draw between when he's working. When he has his vest on, he's super serious. Um, and I feel like it's my job to keep that when his vest is on. But I of course pet him and we look in the eye, and sometimes I find, when there's breaks in time where after an appointment and we're getting ready to go, I'm putting on my jacket, so he deserves that moment of him getting ready to go too. So we sit down for a sec and we look in the eye and I say, good guy, let's go, good job.
Yeah, yeah,
And just kind of give him a little break because it's intense work for these dogs.
yeah.
And for him, and especially since he is getting older, it's important to still let him know, I really appreciate what you're doing. And not that I haven't been, it's just, to keep him working and keep him happy. It's a really important it's an important thing. And I travel a lot. So my tendency is, okay, let's go, let's go, let's go. And yeah, he likes that, but he also enjoys the kind of like, okay, you're like, we're doing this together, you know. So I always find that that's an important kind of balance to keep, and is that like he's not, I don't consider him like serving me, because we're a team. We
Yeah,
serve each other.
exactly.
And he helps me and I help him. And you know, he's just incredible in that way.
I love
So,
it.
you know, I think he does a lot of helping. And I think, but a majority of it, or equal part, is that we help each other. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
And so now starting this podcast, so you've already got season one down. And so what did that give you? And I know you talked about, your Instagram, kind of your joint story. And so the podcast gives you your own voice. And so what was that first season like? And now what are you going to be focusing on for the second, season of that?
So the first season, I think, was, and I had plans for it, but you know, it kind of just, topics come up and you just kind of go with that. It's more of, I want it to be more of an open forum,
Mm-hmm.
a way for people to engage in my message, but not so much just by reading it, but by, you know, committing some time, I guess, to listening and really engaging. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I have an Instagram account for it as well, the Disability Podcast, because I find a podcast alone, it's difficult. So my hope is that it kind of becomes a joint
Mm-hmm.
situation where people listen to the podcast and then they want to reach out to me, and then it's like, of course, come to, my Instagram. I'm
Instagram.
building
Yep.
a website for it. So, and hopefully
Oh,
through
that's great.
that, maybe I could put some kind of forum, or a more interactive way
Mm-hmm.
to connect. So there's a lot of different things with that. But the first season was more of just telling my story, and felt very similar to the Instagram that I have with Edison, but it's more of a separation of disability topics and just sharing my story, but also hoping that to bring on some more people and have them share their stories, because I feel like, there's only a certain amount that I can just say, this is my story, this is my story, this is my story. I mean, I feel like I've done a lot of that with the
Sure.
Edison story. So I think at this point, just, and I've realized so far that there are so many stories out there of
Mm.
people that want to share, their story. And it's like, that's perfect. That's great.
Well, and it's almost like you can really kind of build this nice little community of
Yeah.
people that can connect, that can, where you can, share inspirations and
Yeah.
help through, just different things that maybe somebody's going through that, somebody else has, or can give them some advice, or just sometimes just an ear to listen.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of where the first season was, just sharing some more of my story. And the second season, I'm kind of ramping up to just share more of those smaller, kind of more like smaller topics of, you
Hmm.
know, caregiving, or having aids, or doctor's appointments, and tailoring everything I do with the guests and everything else to that.
Hmm.
Because like I said, it's harder to just continue telling my story, but just trying to pick out the little things, the important aspects that I feel from my story, but kind of
Well,
making sure that those parts are heard, so that people go, yeah, I have the similar situation, like you're saying, but it's really hard actually to create content from that point of view. Just what would people want here? But I've realized with a podcast, you just kind of have to do that. You just kind of have to make a guess and take a gamble and just hope that something resonates.
Well, and if you think about things that like you would have wanted to have known or that you would
Yeah.
have wanted to
Yeah.
kind of do, and then you can kind of build episodes around all of that, right? Like, because there's lots of different nuances that everyone has that,
Yeah.
is great to talk about. And the more that things are talked about, then
Yeah.
the more people understand, and then the more that there's just this ability for us to all work together
Yeah.
instead of doing the opposite.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, so there's that. And then I also know that when you originally found me too, I'm also creating a children's book. So I know you wanted to talk about that. So
Yeah, that was a huge. I love that aspect of just even looking at a children's book. And so, what got you thinking about, one, having that medium to, kind of tell stories, and then two, um, uh, I'm excited to kind of, hear what the book is about, and kind of when we can expect it.
cool. Yeah. So it's just another way, and I think it's a very tangible way. So we talk about the Instagram, and then we talked about the other Instagram and the podcast. Those are tangible, but you can't hold it in your hand. And I think
Yeah.
there's something to be said about that. It's easy nowadays to do an ebook, but more so than more I've been thinking about it. An ebook might come, but it's going to definitely be a physical copy, because there is something to be said about the digital right now, and there's not enough now within the last year of like being able to hold it in your hand.
Mhm.
There I have a lot of books on my bookshelf. Maybe I don't read all of them, but at least they're there and they're tangible. And I think it's interesting in this digital world right now that we're in. There isn't much that we
Mhm.
hold, or so I'm hoping that it is a print copy. I have put out the actual series. So if you look on my Instagram on the Edison 365
Mhm.
SE Instagram, I've actually put out the letters of the alphabet. So for those of you who have seen it or are going to search my Instagram, it's there. You can
Mhm.
read the book right now, actually. I might be a little bit different, but it's there.
I
So,
love it. That's
that's
great.
kind of the neat thing about it. And so when I put it out, it'll just be more of an official thing,
Version
but
of it.
it's there.
Yeah.
It's totally there. So, I have things to do to like kind of make it like round the edges a little and make it
Mhm.
cleaner. I have to get approvals for the text. And try to figure out the images, whether it be, digital or printed or
Yeah.
photos or so
Now,
a lot to do.
now just even that thought of like going on and writing a book. I mean, it's something that a lot of people sometimes think about, but how did you pass that kind of obstacle of like, okay, this is somewhat intimidating, but I'm going to do it anyway?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been a possibility for so long. I mean, I've put the series out on Instagram so many times, and it goes along with what I'm trying to do is to engage people in my story and my story with Edison. And I just thought, people are looking at the post, they're clicking like, but what else are they doing? How are they, you know, I'm not forcing people to read it, but at the same time, it's like, you know, in order for them to truly read it, I'm sure they need to have it in their hand. Um,
Well, and I was having a conversation with somebody about on Instagram where we're talking about sometimes how I saw this meme, like sometimes you'll spend like 2 hours working on a post with like a picture and you're
Yeah.
thinking about all of the stuff
Yeah.
that, and it might have been, I think it might have even been our initial one where it's just like you put all this thought and then
Yeah.
like not a lot of people like it. And then you put out something that's kind of like on a whim, not much kind of energy, and then it's like everyone likes it.
Yeah.
And so I think that to your story, sometimes people just like will look at a picture and will click like, but they're not really reading the message behind it. And so having a book format where somebody's going to read the whole thing,
Yeah.
is really a great kind of alternative
Yeah.
to really combine the two, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I don't, it's funny, I don't have a huge timeline. It's pretty much like an idea that I've actually created the content for. It's just trying to figure out the pieces. I've never published a book. I don't know how it happens. So I just, yeah, it's just and like I said, it seems pretty simple to just go and publish it as an ebook, but we're not at this point in the game. If I'm really trying to raise awareness and really go at this full steam, then we're going to do it as a book. But I'm very, very excited about it. The letters are just pieces of our story that I, came up with one day after the next and just thought, oh, that's a piece really that I feel these are pieces from our relationship, from our team approach that I feel is sharing our story. So it's definitely still in the realm of like, this is what I believe is important for our story and how we work. And it centers around the commands and the tasks that he does. And I take that pretty organically to figure out, the values from the organization itself, like that organized Edison NEADS, and just trying to figure out, the partnership there and just kind of keep them in the loop. So it's a fun project. And
I love it. I think that it's great, and anytime having an animal in there is fantastic because I
yeah,
think that it'll help draw the kids in,
yeah,
and share your story. And so, what better way to really be able to do that than kind of looking at a book? And so that's fantastic. I
yeah,
love that, Sarah.
yeah.
That's
I'm very excited. There's a lot of exciting things that are coming up. It's just trying to figure out how it all kind of comes together. I almost need my own manager to
you
manage.
do.
And maybe
You
the book
do.
is a good start for that because
Yeah.
you could get a manager for the book, and then I'll go, oh, can you just like manage my whole life?
Manage the you just need an executive assistant for yourself that can handle all of the
Get
different
it all
aspects.
together.
I love it. I
Um,
love it. And so, we're kind of coming up on time.
yeah,
I want to just, before we go, this has been an amazing conversation. I truly, truly appreciate it, Sarah. It's helped enlighten me into your world. And I really, I think that anyone who listens and follows, will be better for it. So thank you.
yeah,
But, before we go, I really would love for you to just maybe share, what do you want the general public to know as far as like, I'm sure there are things that people do that they shouldn't. And, or maybe somebody has done in the past that they just shouldn't have done that. Maybe somebody said something that, maybe they weren't and meaning for it to go a certain way, but obviously could potentially offend. Again, the purpose of this is to really help educate folks. And so, is there some sort of education that we can all get with regards to things that maybe we shouldn't do, or things that we should,
yeah.
in
I
order to
guess
help?
it's interesting in a lot of different things that I'm doing right now. Um, it's not the kind of thing where I'm like policing people and saying
No,
this
of
is
course
how
not.
you
Yeah.
should do it and this is how you shouldn't. But I think at the very least, don't be shy.
Mm.
And feel free to ask questions and be curious. I think that is the part that really limits people and blocks them from making connections, is they're just like, how, what do we say? Most
Well,
of
just like any conversation, not to cut you off, but like when two people who don't look alike
yeah, yeah,
automatically see the differences in each other versus having conversations, we find commonality.
yeah.
And so maybe just have more conversations and find commonality where we can enjoy conversations for, I don't know if that.
Yeah, I think there's an awkward moment. So, just to say have conversations, it's harder for one person to just come right out. There's this hesitancy when I'm, let's say, getting in an Uber or of
Oh, sure.
what do you have? And it is awkward because they want to know. They're curious. They don't
Hmm.
know. They're curious to know, but they don't know how to ask. So I think there has to be a way to like bridge that. And I understand that disability is just a hard thing to grasp, and that's okay. But you know, disability, it comes in different forms, different severities. It just so happens that I'm very vocal and I can talk. There are a lot of people who can't. So there's
Hmm.
a difference. And I think there's the middle ground of like, can this person talk? Like, people don't even know, and they don't know how to kind of start that conversation because maybe they can't talk, or maybe they
Hmm.
don't want to talk, or so there's a lot of different variables. But if you see me, I will definitely talk. So that's not a problem. Definitely, reach out on Instagram. I think at this point, a lot of people that will be listening to this stuff is all over, and which is incredible.
Yeah.
So being able to share my message just in that way for now. I live in the New York area, so I'm all over the place in New York. So you might end up seeing me, and if you do, you can absolutely like reach out and talk to me. But in the meantime, just ask questions and don't be shy. I know it's harder than it's easier said than done, because if you see someone, you just don't know how to respond. But we all have our story, and I'm sure
Hmm.
people who I've seen and been hesitant to talk to, they have a story. And I've fallen into the trap of the, I don't know if I want to say hello for whatever reason.
Hmm.
But it's all up to the person, and anything is okay. If you don't want to say hello to someone, you don't have to. I'm pretty okay with pretty much anything. And most likely when people stare at me, I go up to them. I say, hey, how you doing? And people for a second, they're like, oh, hi,
Hmm.
uh, and we start a conversation. And then when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. But it's a simple conversation. It doesn't have to be like,
Yeah.
what's your diagnosis or how you doing or what, anything like
Hmm.
that. It can just be
It
like,
could just be like it's an amazing day outside today,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think finding that balance of like just having a regular conversation, but I think it's hard. And that's what
Hmm.
I'm trying to kind of just bring up, all those different topics, and then it like resonates with someone, and then they realize, okay, I can ask that question. It's not like personal or,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I've probably been asked a lot of the questions that you're probably thinking. So, don't be
Yeah.
shy.
This is great, Sarah. I am so happy that we connected.
Yeah.
This whole conversation has been wonderful for me. I hope it has been for you
Yeah.
because I love your energy. I love your attitude, and Thank you for all of it. Thank you for sharing time with me today, but also thank you for just what you're doing and helping others, have a voice in the future, and just feeling comfortable to be able to maybe share their story with you being as comfortable, sharing your experience. And I think
Hmm.
that, the more of that out there, um, you know, then the more voices we have for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. And that's what we need. So thank you so, so much.
Yeah, of course.